Hi, I'm Nikki from Teaching Autism, and welcome to the Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Are you an autism or special education professional? Are you a teacher or therapist looking for support and new ideas? You may even be a parent, family member, or carer. This podcast is perfect to help you find out more information, support, and get some of your questions answered. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode on my Teaching Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Today on the podcast, I am so excited to be interviewing Kelsey. Kelsey is a special education teacher and she runs a fantastic guided reading system in her classroom. Guided reading is an instructional approach to teaching reading. And today, Kelsey is answering your most frequently asked questions about guided reading in a special education classroom. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Kelsey. Welcome to the podcast today, Kelsey. Could you just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes, so I am a fourth-year teacher in Nashville, Tennessee. I teach special education right now in a public school in Nashville. My classroom this year, I have 7 kids from kindergarten through 4th grade, a range of disabilities, lots of students with autism, intellectual disabilities as well. And I've been doing that for 3 years. In my first year of teaching, I taught kindergarten, and then I run my teacher Instagram and TPT store, Exceptional Elementary.
Wow, so you definitely have a mixture going on in your classroom.
Indeed, yes, it is. It's a really wide range for sure.
I bet that sounds really interesting. And it was sort of your experience and your change from kindergarten to special education that I know you found really helpful for guided reading.
Yes, I did. We did guided reading every single day in kindergarten. I think most general education classrooms do it every single day. And I learned so much about it from that year when I taught kindergarten. And then I've loved being able to take that. It's really helped the students in my classroom now to be able to do that with them every day as well.
That's great that you were able to sort of have some support with the transition from your experience in kindergarten. For those teachers and families maybe who are listening, could you just give a really brief overview of what guided reading is before we dive into it today?
Yeah, so guided reading is basically a time each day where the teacher is reading with small groups of kids or with kids individually, text on that individual student's instructional level. So every student is on a different level and you're reading a book with them and really using that book. And they're usually like very short books. They take like 5 to 10 minutes to read, depending on the complexity of them with that student. And you're using that book almost as like a little mini lesson to cover basically like how to read, but in a really authentic and like really genuine way for kids, so that it's not just you up there talking about something and they're not getting to practice everything you're talking about. You're practicing in that short 15-minute or 20-minute guided reading block.
That was perfect. Thank you. And I feel that guided reading is just a great way for us to teach reading in a variety of different ways as well. Like you say, you can work on it in a range of different activities and things in those guided reading groups.
Yes, exactly. I love it because you hit like all the big 5 components of reading in that one little 20-minute block.
Definitely. And for those who are listening, could you just give a brief overview of those 5 components for me, please?
I hope I remember them all now that I said it. Phonemic awareness is the first one. So that is really being able to hear sounds and tell the differences in sounds and in words. Phonics, which is like letter and sound correspondence and how letters come together to make words. Vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency. So how quickly students are able to read.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I know you talked a lot about the books. And one of the most common questions that I get from special education teachers are, what system should I have in place for choosing books? How do I choose books? What advice would you give them that you find helpful for choosing those books to use?
Yes. I would say your best place to start is going to be with whatever the other teachers in your school are using. So go ask a kindergartner, 1st grade or 2nd grade teacher, if you can, how they're choosing books, because they probably have a system in place in your school. That's what I'm able to do. We have a book room with already leveled books, which is really, really helpful. And that should be something that you can access to, even if you are teaching special education, use those gen ed resources. So I would definitely check there first because everyone does it a little bit differently.
That's great. And it's great as well to have the sort of whole school taking on, if not the same approach, a similar approach when choosing those books as well.
Yes, exactly. Because the big thing with guided reading is these books are all leveled from like A through Z. And so you want to make sure that they've been leveled correctly. And the only way you can really, really make sure of that is if some person who's really, I guess, versed in guided reading or someone who's making these texts has actually confirmed that. So check with your book room first, and hopefully they've purchased some of these kits at some point over the years.
Definitely, because we definitely want to make sure we're using those correct levels and that they've been done properly as well.
Yes, exactly. So rely on the other experts to help you out there.
Definitely. So I know we briefly touched on that you started in kindergarten, then you moved to special education. So you said that that gave you a lot more sort of information and knowledge and experience as well when you moved to special education for setting up guided reading and how you would run this. Could you share your experience with us, sort of how you found the change in regards to guided reading? Were there any big changes you had to make, or were you able to just really easily adapt it for your students?
It wasn't really easy, but it wasn't really hard either to make the switch. So when we were doing it in a kindergarten classroom, it was just a normal part of our day, and someone else had come up with the schedule. So just scheduling it was easier, and we had more students as well. So it was a little bit easier to group kids together. And guided reading focuses a lot on language because it's all about reading the book and then kind of having a discussion about the book afterwards. And a lot of my students now with autism, the language piece is a lot harder. So, if you have a student that struggles to answer WH questions, the like suggested questions that come with the guided reading book probably are going to be really difficult for them. And so that has probably been the biggest thing I've had to adapt. I think in my classes, especially that comprehension piece, and not, I guess, being as rigid and like asking just set questions, but kind of having a more open-ended discussion with my students, especially my students with autism. So after we read the book, I'll ask something more around the lines of like, what did you learn? Or like, what was in the story? And just kind of let them talk and pull as much out of them as I can just through a conversation with them, through however they communicate, versus like having a bulleted list of questions that they answer. I think that was one huge difference. And then I also now do all of my guided reading in my classroom one-on-one. I just find it works a lot better with my students and with different behaviors. We can actually cover a lot more if I can meet with each kid one-on-one, even if I have to shorten the time to like 10 minutes as opposed to meeting with 3 for 20 minutes. We're still able to get more done. So I'd say those changes are things I've definitely made.
And those are all really important changes as well, especially I can imagine your classroom where you have such a wide range of abilities and ages as well. But without teachers feeling crazily overwhelmed, those are sort of things that we tend to adapt on a daily basis as well. It's just you'd be doing it all at once for guided reading.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And the nice thing about it is once it's set up, it's actually pretty easy to just keep changing it. So I find it actually makes it less planning for me because I'm getting this like really solid of 10 or 20 minutes of instruction with each kid every day. We're able to cover so much that then instead of it just being kind of pieced together all throughout the day, it almost takes the pressure off. Because if I'm like, if I can just really focus on this one solid 20 minutes with you, then I feel better about the instruction I'm giving.
That's great. And that's definitely something that we all want more of, is less stress and easier planning.
I know. And this has been really helpful. So it's something I really would recommend for all SPED teachers to do with their kids that are reading levels, that are able to read already, or that you want to be able to read, because you can start them even when they're pre-readers in this structure.
Definitely. And I always say, some of the best professional development you can get is from other teachers. And I know you found your experience in kindergarten helpful. Even though you can't do the same thing, you learned things from it that you could then adapt for your students. So would you sort of say that maybe if people have never had any experience in guided reading before, just to pop into someone else's classroom just to get a sort of idea of what to do and how it runs as well?
Yes, absolutely. Go and observe someone else. That will be really helpful. I'm sure, too, you can probably Google examples of it as well. I would imagine even if you don't have another teacher to watch, that you could watch someone on YouTube at least.
Definitely. There are loads of things on YouTube now that people don't even realize is on there until you go searching on there.
Yes, I know. I'm sure there would be something that you could watch, but the teachers in your own building are probably better than that. So I would totally start there.
Definitely. But YouTube definitely sounds like a great backup just in case. Mm-hmm.
I know. I'm sure it would be.
So going back to where you mentioned how you were concentrating more on that one-to-one session with your students for guided reading for those 10 minutes, what does guided reading fully look like in your classroom on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I follow Jan Richardson's guided reading plans. If you have not done it, I cannot recommend her resources enough. She has a book called The Next Step Forward in Guided Reading, and it covers truly like every single thing you could want to know about guided reading for different students. And she's got lesson plan templates in there with the different components of it each day. And so I follow hers. So we start every day with a sight word review or practicing a sight word. So I'll just pick 2 to 3 different words, and I'll try to pick words that we've been learning and words that are in the book. And we'll either write the sight word or spell the sight word with magnetic letters or practice reading it on flashcards, something like that. Just a quick 1 to 2 minute overview of that. And then I introduce the book. And whenever I introduce the book, I give like a 1 sentence or 2 sentence, depending maybe, little introduction of it. So it might be like, we're going to read the book about dogs. Like, I know that this book has a dog at a birthday party. I wonder what she'll do. And then we'll go through the book just looking at the pictures. And if that's our first day that we've been reading the book, because I usually read the book for 2 days in a row, not with all of my students. Some I do only read 1 day. But in like true guided reading, you are supposed to read it twice. But I'll go through any new vocab in the book. So we'll identify words that they might not know or vocab they might not know and build that background knowledge, which is so important, I feel like, for my students that are English language learners to help them. And a lot of times my students with autism to just talk in general. Like if we read a book about a dog's birthday party, it helps before we read just to talk about birthday parties in general. So they have that background knowledge before they start reading, so they're able to understand what happens more. And at that point, I'll also like do just a 1 minute mini lesson on what reading strategy or what focus I would want them to use. So right now, a lot of mine are very, very early readers. So it might just be like, we're working on look at the first letter in the word and sound it out and then look at the picture and check, or whatever your reading strategy you're using would go over that. And then we spend about 5 minutes actually reading the book. And as they read, I listen to them. And my goal is always to give as few cues as possible and never really to give them the answers. At that point, I'm always talking about strategies. So if they're stuck on a word, I might say like, why don't you try to spell it out? Or what does the first letter look like? Or what would make sense? And in Jan Richardson's plan, she actually has suggested like prompt strategies that you can do during those. So again, that's part of why I love her. And then after that, we would have like a little comprehension question discussion for another 2 to 3 minutes about the book. I mean, what I'm trying to do there is see what they understood from the book, make sure that they got the main point, and teach as well some of those comprehension strategies. So it might be anything from like, look at this page, the character is smiling. How do you think the character feels? Or for, all the way up to when they get better at reading, those comprehension questions become things like, what happened first, next, or last, and things like that. So that's basically my short overview of how it goes every day.
Wow, thank you for sharing. That was amazing to hear as well. And especially how you can incorporate lots of different activities for your students as well. So I'm sure it's a great way for you to sort of provide differentiated teaching for each of your students as well.
Yes, it's extremely differentiated. That's why I love it so much. That's basically the whole point of guided reading is it's always on that kid's individual level.
Definitely. It was just so interesting to hear, the process that you have with it, the way that you use it with your students. And I guess once you've done it a few times, that really gets ingrained in you as well. So it makes it easier to flow through that lesson, and it'll be easier for the students then as well.
Yes, I love it too because we deal with some short attention spans. So it's nice that everything is only a couple of minutes at a time. And it's also nice that the kids know the flow of the lesson so they know it's expected, which I find really helps them have more success with their behavior during the whole lesson to know this is exactly what we're going to do each time. And I can know when it's going to be over and all of that kind of stuff.
Definitely. It's a sort of strict routine, but you're mixing it up as well. So it's not always set in stone. You're changing, the books, the activities, but still working on all those important skills to develop reading as well.
Yes, exactly. So it's great. I'm a huge fan of it. And like I said, all of this comes from Jan Richardson, who's kind of the expert on guided reading, and she has some great resources and books. So I really follow what she suggests and then make sure that it works for my students as well. So sometimes you might not be able to do all 5 things in one day, but I can at least get to 3 of them and then break it up. So
yeah, and I think that's really important for us in our field is that we be flexible and we don't be too hard on ourselves if we can't make every single thing fit into that one session.
Yes, exactly. Some days they're just, their reading was really hard, or some days their comprehension piece they really didn't want to do. So we might have a 30-second comprehension, then move into a writing activity and just, whatever will work for that day to get the most learning in is what we do.
Definitely, because it's definitely a day-by-day basis with our students, sometimes even hour by hour.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I know they change a lot throughout the day. So
definitely. And being able to sort of recognize that and adjust things will be really helpful. But the thing that us sort of special education teachers and therapists love the most is taking data. And what way do you sort of take data for your guided reading, if anything at all?
Yes. So I actually love it because I can take so much data during guided reading. So whenever the child is reading, I do what is called a running record, which is basically where you write down a plus or a minus for every single word in the book. And so you know exactly how many words, what words they missed and if they got it wrong. There's some fancy data sheets you can use for this. But what I honestly do is just get a Post-it note. And I'll just start a new line for each page because, like I said, my kids are on 1 sentence per page kind of books right now. We're reading very early level ones, so it's easy to do that way. And I'll just, if they read the right word, I make the plus sign. If it's the wrong word, I'll write a minus and write down the word that they said instead. And then I just start a new line of those pluses and minuses on the next page. And so I can put all of it on one Post-it note. So then that way I know how many words they missed each time. So I'm getting their reading fluency there and their words read correctly. And then also in that sight word piece, that's a pretty easy time to assess which sight words they knew as well. Or at the end of the week, you can put all the sight words together or something like that and make it work for you.
I love that because it's so much easier. I think there's a lot of pressure for us to have these really fancy sheets for recording and making them look wonderful and recording every little single thing that's going on every second. But everyone has Post-it notes and sticky notes on hand, and that's just a much easier way for you to record. And I think when we have those big sheets, if we have students who are aware of what you're doing, it can be quite overwhelming if you're working on this huge sheet in front of them. But a little sticky note or Post-it note, that's probably they're not even going to notice it really.
Yes, I know. And if they do, they're usually not too bummed because the whole point is that they're reading most of these words correctly. So there's always way more pluses than minuses. So they're excited about it too.
Definitely. It's such an easy system to use as well, and one that everyone can understand really quickly. If you were off one day and someone has to take over, a plus and a minus, you can't really go wrong with that.
Yes, exactly. So, and then on days, there are days too where I incorporate writing at the very end. So then that's a good time. I can check their writing goals. And then the comprehension piece. I feel like so many of our goals have answering questions or comprehension goals. And so during those like conversations about the book after, you can really target whatever you need for that using whatever kind of data system you want to use. So
definitely a great way to work on a huge range of skills, more than just reading. Like you say, you're working on writing and comprehension skills. So that's a lot that people can fit into these guided reading sessions.
Yes, that's definitely, I think, my favorite part of it. That's what my favorite thing is as a teacher. And it's so nice because I feel like I am able to actually hit on all of those things with all of my kids every single day, which is a great feeling to have. So
definitely, especially in one session where you're not sort of having to move your students from one table to the next table to the next table. Everyone's working on different skills. You're trying to stumble and find all activities. But in this guided reading session, it's so much easier as well.
yes, it really is. It can feel like a lot at the beginning to get set up, but once you're in the hang of it, it's so worth it. And it really it doesn't run itself. You do have to do a little bit of upkeep, but it becomes really easy to plan for.
Yeah, I think it's like anything where once you have a system in place and you're doing it consistently, you sort of find it a little bit more smooth sailing.
Yes, exactly. So I really have enjoyed it and really loved the learning that happens in it and the lack of planning that it takes on my part.
Definitely. I know the sort of lack of planning, that is a huge pro for guided reading. But what would you say are some more pros and cons of guided reading?
We hit on it a little bit earlier, but I really think a huge pro is that it's totally individualized. So you're able to hit on the skills that actual child needs every single day. So you can do the sight words that they need. You can do the reading strategies that they need, the phonics or the phonemic awareness that they need, the writing that they need every single day. And it's not student led, but it's not like you're up there talking for 5 minutes. It's really all you watching the student and kind of guiding them through how to read this book. So it's really engaging for kids and they love getting all of that like one-to-one attention and getting all that practice with the teacher there. So those would definitely be my other big pros.
They all sound great. And like you say, one of my favorite parts of it are that you can differentiate it for your students and you're working on their individual goals in a much easier to plan session each day.
Yes, exactly.
So do you think there are any cons or do you think there are just sort of pros for guided reading?
It does take some time. So like I said, I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guided reading groups a day. And so that is taking up about an hour of my day each day, or over an hour and a half. But I think it's so worth it when you see the trade-off for the kids.
Definitely. So I think maybe that and the very original starting up of it are the cons, but the pros definitely outweigh them every time.
Yes, that's how I feel now that I get to do it every day. So
I think having that consistent routine is really important. So I know that's going to be a huge tip for teachers, but do you have any other tips that you could maybe offer teachers who are thinking about either implementing guided reading for the first time, or maybe they're struggling with it and they just need a little bit of redirection?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say keep it simple, like pick your 3 or 4 activities that you're going to do every single day, and simplify it as much as you can so that you aren't super overwhelmed. So like it's okay if you do sight words first and then you don't have to, I guess, be super fancy with it. So like if your sight words is all you're doing is writing them on the whiteboard, or if what you're doing is having students fill in a missing letter of a sight word or whatnot, or even just doing basic flashcards, like stick with something that feels the most manageable to you. And same thing with like vocab instruction. Don't feel like you need to have, if you're reading a book about a birthday party and parties your vocab, it's okay to just use the pictures in the book. Don't feel like you need to like go on Google and print out 10 different pictures of a party to have like this super long discussion about it. It's okay if you just say like, this is a party. A party is where we celebrate, and look at the picture in the book and keep it really short and simple there. So don't get overwhelmed, I guess, with trying to do too much, and really try to stick to like one schedule that will work for you.
I love those. And I love the fact that keeping it simple is pretty much what's best.
Yes, indeed. It is. It's nice that it's best for kids and that it's best for teachers as well.
Definitely, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed and try and make things Pinterest worthy and Instagram worthy. But like you say, even just writing on the whiteboard, that works just as well.
Yes, exactly. And, the nice thing is too, like the shorter we are talking, then that's better too. So it's okay if your mini lesson is truly only 30 seconds. So if you're trying to teach a new skill, like sounding out a word, it's okay to only do it 3 times and then just move on and keep going with the lesson. So
definitely. So I think we will sort of call that the 3 S's: short, sweet, and simple. That's the perfect way for success.
Yes, exactly. Especially for guided reading, but for so many things in our classrooms.
Definitely. It was so brilliant to talk to you today, Kelsey, about all things guided reading. I just know that my listeners are going to find it so helpful, because I think guided reading can seem really overwhelming, especially maybe if it's your first year in special education and you don't know where to start with all the things. But this would be really helpful.
Good. I'm so glad. And I know you're going to link, but they can follow me on all my platforms and reach out and message if they have any other questions. I'd love to talk to them.
Definitely. I will link in the show notes to all your social media.
Thank you so much. This was really fun to talk to you.
I just want to send Kelsey a huge thank you for coming on the podcast today and spending her valuable time to talk to us all about guided reading in a special education classroom. I don't know about you guys, but that podcast episode was fantastic to learn all things guided reading, and I really hope that you find it as helpful as I did. Don't forget to head on over to the show notes, where I am going to be linking all the things that we talked about today, as well as where you can find Kelsey. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.